right, Congresswoman Bachmann, thank you for taking time to let me ask you a few questions for our readers.
Shane, it's a privilege to be with you in Des Moines.
Okay, great. Well, I was at the event yesterday when you were speaking to homeschoolers, and you had mentioned you're all in for 2012, and I know that got explained that meant you're just in with us to help take back the Senate and gain more seats in the House and win back the White House. However, you being in Iowa, there's obviously everybody's thinking, well, is she going to run for president? And I'd heard that you're thinking possibly making a decision in June. Is that correct? Or did I hear wrong?
No, we are looking at possibly forming a exploratory committee, but that wouldn't be until this summer. We haven't made the final decision. I think it's very important for a candidate to be a part of the Iowa straw poll. Okay. I am an Iowan. I was born here. I'm a seventh generation Iowan. I was born in Waterloo. But we need to make that decision, I think, by sometime this summer. Okay. But we're very encouraged by the response we're getting in Iowa.
Great. Well, what criteria are you looking at in order to help make you that decision?
Well, both my husband and I have to know that we know that we know that this is the right thing to do, because a decision like this has the potential to change our lives. We need to know if this is the right place and the right time and the right person to do this job. It's a momentous job, and so we're thinking it through very, very carefully and prayerfully, and we will make a decision, and then we will let people know.
Great. You talked about repealing Obamacare yesterday, and I know there's talks about defunding it in the House. I'm just wanted to ask where is the House at with that? Is House leadership behind that movement? Are they going to get that done?
Well, we cannot repeal Obamacare realistically now as long as President Obama's in the White House and Harry Reid is in the Senate. However, we do think there's a potential for defunding Obamacare. That would effectively repeal the bill from now until we can have the next presidential election. In order to do that, we need to attach our defunding legislation to a real crunch point, and that would be, for instance, the budget bill or the bill to raise the debt ceiling. Those are two must-haves for President Obama to continue spending money. Well, if the president wants to continue spending, he has to give something back for that. And we think that he needs to give back the money that they deceptively hid in the Obamacare legislation, $105.5 billion. And we think there should be no current monies that are put forward. This Obamacare legislation is more unpopular today than ever. Never in the last year has it ever gone below a majority of Americans that want us to get rid of Obamacare. In fact, now it's 62% of Americans. It's just like Nancy Pelosi said, we have to pass the bill to know what's in it. The more we find out what it is, the less we like this bill.
Okay, great. Do you think the House leadership, if it comes back to, because Senate obviously will reject that, and then we see sausage getting made as far as having to collaborate with the Senate and deciding who's going to keep what. Do you think House leadership will stick to their guns and definitely it'll trying to get my question out here.
We certainly do hope so. Okay. We see that they are committed to cutting spending from the very beginning. Cutting spending is a wonderful, laudable goal, but we also think it's imperative that we change the arc of history. And the best way that we can do that and cut spending would be to make sure that Obamacare does not get funded, because we all know it will cost us all, not only through the tax dollars, trillions of dollars, but here's the even bigger issue that a lot of your viewers are seeing. President Obama promised us that our health care premiums would go down $2,500 a year. Instead, we're seeing huge spikes in insurance premiums, 20%, 40% increase in premiums or more. This is not what the American people bargained for, because now we're paying more and we're getting less for health care. What a deal. Pay more, get less. No wonder the American people hate this bill.
Definitely. No Child Left Behind. President Obama says he wants to see that renewed, strengthened. What's your position, and what do you think the role of the federal government should be in education?
I am not a fan of No Child Left Behind. I never have been. I oppose the federal government's involvement in the local public schools. I attended great public schools in Iowa when I first started my education. I was here for kindergarten through 6th grade. They were great public schools because they were locally controlled and locally put together by our public schools or by our parents and by teachers and our local administrators. Now with the federal government taking more and more authority away from the local schools, it's very hard to have meaningful change in our schools. I would prefer to see the Federal Department of Education abolished and done away with. And instead, I'd rather see parents and states keep the monies that are sent to Washington, D.C. It ends up in the bureaucracy.
Okay. What strategy would need to be implemented to actually abolish the Department of Education? Because I could just see right now, if moves are made to do that, people are like, oh, children,
Well,
you
it
don't
is
care about the
children.
kids.
The reason why we would abolish the Department of Education is so that we could have a better academic educational outcome for our children. Clearly, since the inception of the Federal Department of Education, which was a payoff by former President Jimmy Carter to the teachers union, we've actually seen declines in test scores during that time. So what we want is good academic achievement, and we want true choice in education for America's children. So the most positive thing that we could do is allow families to keep more of their own money and states to keep more of their own education money and eliminate the bureaucracy in Washington, D.C.
Okay. Yeah, people just need to be reminded that, kids were educated before 1977 when that
It's true.
department was...
And the test scores were far higher. The academic outcomes were higher.
Okay, shifting gears a little bit, Libya. What's your position on the president's involvement in the no-fly zone in Libya?
My opinion is the president has mishandled the situation in Libya. We're currently extended both in Iraq and in Afghanistan. The president has failed to clearly enunciate his strategy in the Middle East region. And remember, Libya is not the only country with instability. Egypt, Bahrain, Jordan, Tunisia, Yemen. We see numerous nations, and Syria now as well. I sit on the House Intelligence Committee on dealing with the nation's classified secrets, and I think while I can't comment on anything dealing with that, I think the president has failed to even state who the opposition leaders are who would be helped. It's entirely, we don't know if the opposition leaders are backed by Hamas or Hezbollah or Al-Qaeda in North Africa. So it could be, if Gaddafi falls, potentially Al-Qaeda of North Africa would take over. Would that serve American interests? I think this is such a murky situation. We don't even know who's controlling this effort, and yet we've put American soldiers in harm's way and we've put American treasure at risk with no ending strategy in sight. So I think that the president has mishandled this. I am reluctant to see the involvement that the president has put into place, and I think we need to deal with what's happening on the ground with Iraq and Afghanistan.
Okay, I know you have limited time, so just one last question, and this is vitally important. Since you grew up in Iowa, Cyclones or Hawkeyes?
Hawkeyes.
Oh, good answer. Good answer. Now you probably alienated about half the state, but that's okay. Thank you.
You have to come down somewhere.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
Thank
Congresswoman
you.
Bachmann.